Welcome back to Deep Dive. Grab a seat, get comfortable, maybe dim the lights a little bit. We're settling in for a really fascinating story today. The vibes we're going for are, relaxed. Think late night conversation by the fire.
Right, but the subject matter, it is anything but simple. It's actually quite electric. We're looking at the invisible threads that tie us to other people today and how those threads might actually be pulling on our physical health in ways we never really suspect.
Yeah, it's a bit of a detective story, a bit of a medical mystery, and honestly, a whole lot of psychology. But before we get into the psychic plumbing of it all, we have to get the housekeeping out of the way.
Always the housekeeping.
Exactly. Just a mandatory disclaimer for everyone listening. This podcast is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes. We are here to learn, to explore, and to share. We aren't doctors, and we aren't telling you to stop taking your vitamins.
Well, actually, one of our sources might tell you that, but
We will get there. We definitely will. And speaking of sources, the map for our exploration today is a very specific, very interesting document. We are doing a deep dive into Session 318 of the Early Sessions, Book 7 of the Seth Material.
to set the scene for you, let's travel back in time a bit. It is Wednesday, February 8th, 1967. It's 9 p.m. We are in Elmira, New York. It's probably cold outside, maybe snowing.
And we are diving into the wisdom published by the New Awareness Network, specifically the words of Seth, who is this energy personality essence channeled by Jane Roberts.
Right. And if you're new to this whole world, Jane is often referred to by Seth as Ruburt. It's a bit of inside baseball, but essentially when you hear us say Ruburt today, we're talking about Jane, but specifically her larger male-identified psyche, according to Seth. It's like her total self-name.
I'm glad you clarified that. And the conflict in this session, Session 318, is relatable to literally anyone who has ever felt off for no apparent reason. It's all about the boundaries of the self. We're calling this the sponge effect.
Oh, I like that, the sponge effect.
Because imagine walking around your day, minding your own business, but you're actually absorbing everyone else's drama. Their sickness, their bad moods, and you don't even realize it. You think you're just having a bad day, but you're actually downloading someone else's virus.
It's the fundamental difference between having an emotion and catching an emotion. And, most of us just don't have the psychological immune system to tell the difference between the two.
And in this session, Seth is acting like a very specific, sometimes incredibly sassy therapist or life coach for Jane. He is not letting her get away with anything.
No, he really isn't. He's incredibly direct with her.
So the mission for this deep dive is to unpack how our ego plays tricks on us, how our bodies symbolize our mental knots, like literal physical knots, and why Seth thinks partying is sometimes better medicine than taking your vitamins.
Which is advice I think we can all get behind.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, let's unpack this. Segment 1, the invisible Wi-Fi, or telepathy and clairvoyance.
Yeah.
Seth opens this session with a bit of a call-out. He basically says Ruburt Jane is refusing to accept reality.
Specifically, she's refusing to accept that she is constantly influenced by telepathic and clairvoyant data. She desperately wants to believe her thoughts and feelings are entirely her own, generated solely inside her own skull.
Which is how most of us feel, right?
Yeah, she's clinging to this idea of mental privacy that Seth says just doesn't really exist biologically. Seth says, and this is a direct quote, he responds to the totality of stimuli that reaches him, regardless of the way in which any given stimuli is received.
That is a heavy sentence. What does totality of stimuli really mean in a practical, everyday sense for you and me?
Well, think of it this way. You have your 5 physical senses. You see a car coming, you jump out of the way, you hear a siren, you look, you smell smoke, you check your oven, you react to those stimuli automatically. Your body is designed to respond to input.
Okay.
Seth is arguing that telepathy and clairvoyance are just other senses. They are just another stream of data pouring in, whether you acknowledge them or not.
So it's like, imagine you have a radio inside your head. It's constantly scanning frequencies. You might pick up a sad song from the neighbor's apartment, but because the radio is in your head, you think you are the one singing the sad song. You take ownership of the signal.
Precisely. You own the emotion because you feel it, but the source is entirely external. And in this session, Seth brings receipts. He doesn't just say you're telepathic in some vague woo-woo way. He lays out a specific, undeniable case study involving a woman named Muriel to prove to Jane exactly what she's doing.
This is the detective story part. I love when Seth gets granular like this. So who are the players here? We have Muriel and her parents, Marion and Jimmy.
Right. And the situation is tragic but very specific. Muriel was suffering from mental illness. Her mother, Marion, was suffering from arthritis. Now Jane, our protagonist here, starts developing mysterious symptoms of arthritis. Swollen joints, severe pain in her hands and feet.
And typically you'd go to a doctor and look for a physical cause. You'd ask, did I injure myself? Is it the Dampel-Meyer weather? Is it genetic? But Seth says, no, look at the psychic connection.
Right, because Jane passes people on the street all the time who are sick,
Yeah.
and she doesn't catch everything. So why this specific illness from this specific family?
Exactly. Why did she tune into Marion's arthritis?
It's all about resonance.
Yeah.
This is the core mechanics of the sponge effect. Seth points out the undeniable parallels between Jane's life and Muriel's life. Muriel left college without completing it, and she left in disfavor.
Yeah.
Jane also left college without completing it, in disfavor. Marion, the mother in this family, didn't approve of Muriel's friends. Jane's mother didn't approve of her friends.
Whoa. So it's not just random. It's not like catching a cold on the subway where it's just bad luck and proximity. Jane picked up this signal because she was specifically tuned to the mother issue's frequency.
Exactly. It's what we call sympathetic vibration. Imagine two tuning forks across the room from each other. If they are tuned to the exact same note and you strike one, the other one automatically starts vibrating, even without touching. Exactly. Jane wasn't just empathetic in the sense of saying, oh, that's sad for them. She was clairvoyantly observing the situation, seeing the mental illness in Muriel and the arthritis in Marion, and because her own deep psychological history mirrored theirs so perfectly, her body started literally miming the symptoms.
Yeah, it's wild. She started acting out the arthritis because she identified with the mother figure in that dynamic. Her body essentially said, oh, we know this song, let's play along.
Yes, and because she didn't know she was doing it, she couldn't stop it. She thought it was her own arthritis.
And Seth, I just love Seth because he does not coddle her. He's essentially saying ignorance is no excuse in the psychic realm.
He is tough. He tells her, quote, he will automatically react to such information whether or not he consciously admits that he receives it. Basically, just because you don't believe in gravity doesn't mean you won't fall off a cliff.
Right.
If you don't believe in germs, you still get sick. If you don't believe in telepathy, you still get the telepathic virus.
So what's the fix? If you and I are walking around like open, unsecured Wi-Fi networks, how do we put a password on it? How do we stop downloading everyone else's trauma at the grocery store?
Seth offers a very practical, very simple mental tool. It's almost like a software patch for your brain. He suggests a daily suggestion or mantra is just, I will only react to constructive suggestions.
I will only react to constructive suggestions.
Right. It's a form of active psychic shielding. It tells your subconscious, hey, I acknowledge that there's data coming in from everywhere, from the news, from my friends, from the ether, but I am setting a strict filter. I'm only letting in the stuff that helps me build, not destroy.
It's literally like spam filtering for your soul.
Yeah.
Check the inbox, you see the junk mail, you see the weird phishing scams, but you just don't click the link.
Ideally, yes. You don't become numb to the world. You just become highly selective about what you absorb.
I love that. I will only react to constructive suggestions. I might have to write that on my bathroom mirror. Okay, let's move on to segment 2, because this is where it gets really interesting for the creatives listening, and honestly for anyone who just feels a bit clogged up mentally. The art of letting go.
This is one of the most profound insights in the entire session, in my opinion. Seth starts talking about the role of poetry in Jane's life. Now, Jane was a prolific writer, a poet. But Seth argues this wasn't just a fun hobby or a career choice for her. It was a strict biological necessity.
He says poetry siphons off subconscious desires, moods, and repressions. It's acting like a pressure valve.
Think of the subconscious as a really busy, cluttered room. Or maybe a basement where you just throw everything you don't want to deal with right now. You have all these fears, desires, weird intrusive thoughts, primal urges.
We all have that basement.
We do, and if that room gets too full, you can't do any serious work in there. You can't even walk around without tripping over an old childhood fear. Writing poetry was Jane's way of taking that clutter and moving it out, transforming it into art.
So the poetry is the clean-out mechanism. It's the janitor.
Yes, and Seth describes this really beautiful, elegant feedback loop.
Yeah.
Step 1, the personal subconscious material, her daily drama, her complicated feelings about her mother, her fears, is turned into art. Into poetry.
Okay, step 1 is the dump.
Right. Step 2, because of that art, the subconscious is cleared. It's empty now. It's spacious and quiet. Step 3, because the space is finally clear, the deep psychic work, the actual channeling of Seth, can safely happen.
Because there's finally room for Seth to step into the room.
Exactly. And then step 4, Those new mind-bending psychic experiences then become entirely new subjects for her poetry.
It's a perpetual motion machine of creativity. The art clears the way for the magic, and the magic inspires more art.
It is. Seth notes that the cycle of creativity is always enriched. But here is the catch, and it's a big one. If you tamper with that cycle, the whole system backs up.
That is such a funny image to me, but also deeply relatable. Imagine calling your boss and saying, I can't come in today, I really need to write a poem. My psychic plumbing is severely backed up.
It sounds funny, but it's physiologically real. If you deny that creative outlet, you aren't just quote-unquote not making art. You are causing a massive toxic blockage in your own psychological system. Seth says the personality could not approach its own promise until the poetic nature led to the psychic development.
Wow. So creativity isn't a distraction from the real work. It is the engine that allows the real work to happen. That is huge. I think so many of us feel guilty for taking time to draw or write or just play music. We think we should be doing something productive.
Right, the hustle culture mindset.
Exactly. But Seth is saying that if you don't do the creative thing, you literally break your own machine.
You become toxic to yourself. Your basement floods.
But every good story needs a villain. And in this story, the villain is ourselves. Or rather, a very specific, stubborn part of ourselves. Segment 3, the ego's great con job.
Ah, the ego. In this session, Seth treats the ego like a character in a play. A very insecure, highly manipulative character, almost like a nervous middle manager who is absolutely terrified of getting fired.
So why is the ego freaking out so much here? Jane is discovering these amazing abilities. She's doing telepathy, clairvoyance, channeling a profound entity. You'd think the ego would be stoked, like, look at us, we have superpowers.
You would think that. But put yourself in the ego's shoes. Your one job is to maintain the status quo, to keep Jane safe, normal, and socially acceptable in 1960s America.
Right.
Suddenly, Jane starts channeling a disembodied personality, speaking in a deep trance voice and displaying wild psychic abilities. The ego feels completely threatened. It thinks, I'm losing control here. This is weird. This is dangerous. People are going to lock us up or think we're crazy.
So the ego decides to sabotage the entire operation. But, and here's the brilliant twist, it doesn't do it by saying stop. It doesn't put up a red stop sign. It does it by saying, sure, okay, but.
Right. It's a remarkably sophisticated psychological trick. Seth says the ego pretended to accept the psychic nature, but then it set up a trap. It decided to strictly define what a psychic should be. It's pure malicious compliance.
And let me guess, the definition it came up with was completely impossible.
Completely. The ego decided that if Jane was going to be a real psychic, she had to be saintly, dignified, quiet, restrained, a sort of mystic, ascetic nun floating 2 inches above the ground at all times.
And knowing what we know about Jane Roberts, she was definitely not a nun.
No. And Seth points this out with noticeable glee. Jane was intensely spontaneous. She was lively. She was energetic. She was loud. She was deeply human. She liked to have a drink. She liked smoking cigarettes. She had a quick temper.
So the ego set her up to fail. It said, sure, go ahead and be psychic, but you have to be this perfect, quiet, infallible saint, fully knowing she couldn't do it.
Exactly. It's setting standards that guarantee failure. The ego was banking on the hope that Jane would get so frustrated trying to be saintly that she would just throw her hands up and quit the psychic work entirely. It was using spiritual perfectionism as a weapon against her.
That is diabolical. And honestly, so relatable. How often do we do that to ourselves? I'll start working out, but I have to go to the gym 7 days a week at 4 a.m. and only eat kale.
Yeah.
And when we miss one single day, we just quit the whole thing.
It's the exact same mechanism. The ego says, I'll get my own way by pretending to give in, but I'll make the conditions so utterly impossible that you'll quit.
Seth also mentions that the ego hid behind a specific mask, a persona called the writer.
Yes. The writer was a very crafted persona Jane developed early on to protect herself from her deeply critical mother. The writer is an observer. The writer is detached from the messy world. The writer is safe behind the typewriter.
Right, the writer just watches.
But the psychic work required her to be completely vulnerable and deeply involved. So the writer armor was trying to strangle the magic because the magic felt too dangerous, too exposed.
It's amazing how we build these little forts inside our heads to survive childhood, and then they become our prisons later on. But eventually the pressure inside the fort gets too high. Which leads us right into segment 4. Spontaneity versus control. The explosion.
This is where we get into the literal mechanics of repression. Seth explains that Jane's subconscious, her intuitive, psychic self, is extremely vital. It's loud. It desperately needs expression.
But her mother taught her that spontaneity was fundamentally bad. Spontaneity equals trouble. Spontaneity makes a mess and gets you yelled at.
So you have an irresistible force, the subconscious, meeting an immovable object, the rigid, terrified ego.
And when you have that dynamic, you get explosions. Seth points out a fascinating cycle involving alcohol here. And we should clarify for everyone listening, Seth isn't advocating for alcoholism or substance abuse, but he's analyzing the specific psychological function that alcohol played for Jane at this time in her life.
Right. It's a very nuanced look at behavior. He's looking at the mechanics of the release. He observes that when Jane would have a drink, the alcohol would chemically relax the ego's grip. The rigid guard dog would finally go to sleep for a bit.
And when the guard dog sleeps,
The repressed spontaneity absolutely breaks out, but because it's been bottled up under such high pressure for so long, it doesn't come out as a gentle, flowing stream. It explodes, it comes out messy, maybe overly emotional, maybe too loud. It floods the basement we were talking about earlier.
and then the next morning, the ego wakes up, sees the mess, and absolutely panics.
The ego screams, "See? I told you. If you let go of control for even a second, disaster happens. You embarrass yourself. You were too loud." So the ego clamps down even harder than before. It triples the defenses.
Wow.
And Jane becomes afraid to even have a single social drink because she associates any relaxation with a complete loss of control.
Seth actually points this out. He says, when Ruburt becomes leery or afraid to allow himself the normal amount of social drinking, this is a symptom telling you that the subconscious is being too tightly held.
It's a massive paradox. Being terrified of the drink is actually the warning sign that you need to radically relax the control that makes a drink dangerous in the first place. If you weren't repressing so much vital energy, the release wouldn't be an explosion, it would just be a natural flow.
It's a vicious cycle. You hold on tight, so you explode, so you hold on even tighter. And while all this exhausting mental gymnastics is happening, the physical body is keeping score. Which brings us to segment 5, the body talks.
We touched on the arthritis earlier, but Seth goes incredibly deep into the physical symbolism here. He treats the human body like a living dream symbol. He doesn't look at it and see illness, he looks at it and sees information.
Let's talk about the hands and feet specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Jane had swollen joints, terrible pain in her extremities. Why there? Why not her stomach or her back?
Seth connects this back to the mother identification we talked about, but he adds a crucial layer about movement. Hands and feet are our primary biological tools for interacting with the world and moving through it. You handle your problems with your hands, you walk toward your future with your feet.
He says Jane feels like she cannot run from her problems anymore. She's decided to bravely face them. But she also feels like she's not getting anywhere at all. She's just spinning her wheels in the mud.
Right, she's stuck. Her internal monologue is, "I absolutely won't run away, but I have no idea how to move forward." The result, total immobilization. Her body literally ties her hands. It creates a physical reality that perfectly matches her emotional reality.
There is a quote from one of Jane's own poems that Seth brings up during this, and I have it here. It says, "If I can't move one finger, how can the whole soul rise?"
It's a heartbreakingly beautiful line, but it shows that Jane profoundly knew on a deep poetic level exactly what was happening to her. The physical limitation is just a mirror of the spiritual limitation.
And what about the stiff neck? Because she had that too.
That one is a bit more literal, actually. A stiff neck represents a rigidity of attitude, being stubborn.
A pain in the neck.
Exactly. The subconscious gives you a stiff neck to physically show the ego, "Hey, you are being entirely too inflexible. Look at your neck. You literally cannot turn your head to see another perspective right now."
It's a pun. The subconscious is basically making a dad joke with your central nervous system.
It really often does. The subconscious is very literal, very visual, and very punny.
So what is the cure for this terrible feeling of being tied up? How do you actually untie the physical knot?
Movement. But Seth radically reframes what movement means for Jane. Jane was terrified that if she moved, she would be running away, just like she did in her past. She thought staying put and suffering was brave. Seth tells her, no, the answer, symbolically, is that movement can be toward and not away from.
You don't have to freeze in place to prove you aren't a coward. You can walk toward a solution.
He says you must allow yourself free motion. Don't be so afraid that action equals running away. Action can be the ultimate courage.
That is profound advice for anyone listening who feels stuck in a rut. Just move. The direction certainly matters, but the movement itself has to come first. Stagnation is the real enemy here.
Precisely. Flow is health. Stagnation is illness.
All right, so we've analyzed the problem. The psychic Wi-Fi is jammed with negative signals, the ego is actively sabotaging the creative plumbing, and the body is literally tying itself in knots. What is the doctor's order?
Segment 6, Dr. Seth's prescription. And I have to say, looking at this list, some of this is just weird. It's definitely not what you'd get at a typical medical clinic. It is delightfully eccentric, but if you follow the symbolic logic we've been building for the last hour, it makes perfect sense.
First up on the prescription pad, the color green.
Seth simply states he reacts favorably to the color green. It has a healing quality for him.
Simple enough. Wear green, look at green, paint the bedroom walls green. It's about sympathetic vibration again, giving the body a healing frequency. But then we get to the cod liver oil ban.
This is genuinely my favorite part of the session. Seth outright tells Jane she has to stop taking cod liver oil immediately.
But wait, is cod liver oil bad for arthritis? I always thought it was supposed to be good for your joints.
Scientifically, medically. Usually, yes, it's considered good. It's packed with vitamin D and omega-3s. But Seth says it is absolute poison for Jane. Why? Because the very word cod liver oil operates as a massive negative suggestion for her subconscious.
Oh, it's the association.
Yes. Maybe her mom forced it down her throat when she was a helpless, sick kid. Maybe she deeply associates the smell with being a fragile invalid.
So every single time she obediently swallows a spoonful of it, she isn't actually swallowing healing vitamins. She is swallowing the psychic idea of, I am a sickly child who needs medicine.
Exactly. It is the placebo effect in reverse, the nocebo effect. The cytological association is vastly stronger than the chemical makeup of the oil. If your deep mind rejects the symbol, your body won't use the chemistry.
So the prescription is, stop taking the thing that makes you feel like a sick person, even if society calls it medicine. That is fascinating.
Correct. It is much better to take nothing at all than to take a powerful negative suggestion every morning.
Next item on the prescription pad, partying.
Seth explicitly suggests partyings and excursions for them.
Doctor, I'm feeling deeply depressed and my neck is killing me. Well, I want you to go to a loud club on Friday night, spend too much money, and dance.
Basically, yes. He tells them to go have a frivolous evening out this weekend. Why? To forcefully break the pattern. Jane's mother sat at home, stewed in her misery, and became physically immobilized. If Jane sits at home and stews in her deep thoughts, she is actively reinforcing that telepathic identification. Going out, being frivolous, having loud fun, it's a radical act of breaking the psychic chain.
In modern psychology, they call that behavioral activation. You have to physically put your body in a joyous, unpredictable environment to remind your soul how to do it. You can't just think your way out of a deep funk. Sometimes you literally have to dance your way out.
And finally, we have some interior design feng shui.
The lamp and the nightgown. Let's talk about the lamp first.
Seth gets very, very specific about the layout of their apartment. He mentions the small lamp in the bedroom, saying it added to his disinclination to sleep there. It's just bad lighting. It's creating a gloomy, depressing atmosphere that the ego is using to feel sad. Move it. Get a brighter bulb.
And the pink nightgown. Because this one feels very personal.
Seth tells them the pink nightgown should be lain away. In fact, it should probably be disposed of.
Trash the nightgown.
It has bedroom connotations that are currently deeply negative for her. Again, it is all about symbols. If you put on that specific pink nightgown and you immediately feel sad or trapped, or it reminds you of your mother, or if you wore it during a terrible bout of illness, you have to burn it. Get rid of it.
It is amazing how much of our physical environment is just constantly, silently programming us. The amber pill bottle on the counter, the gloomy lamp in the corner, the old faded pajamas you wear when you have the flu. Seth is basically saying, audit your entire life. If an object brings your frequency down, ruthlessly get rid of it.
And, just to add a layer of rigorous credibility to all of this, in the source material, there's also a brief mention of a linen canvas. This was part of an ongoing envelope experiment they were doing, testing Seth's clairvoyance scientifically. Seth correctly identified a small piece of linen canvas hidden inside a sealed, double-blind envelope. It just reminds us that while all this intense personal therapy is happening, they are also meticulously conducting these rigorous psychic tests. It's a fascinating mix of serious scientific inquiry and deeply personal, messy therapy.
Which is really the core of the entire Seth material. It's high strangeness, it's cosmic reality, but it's deeply grounded in the messy, everyday reality of being a human being with a stiff neck in a snowy apartment. It's practical magic.
It really is. It's magic you can actually use on a random Wednesday night in Elmira.
So what does this all mean for us today? Let's wrap this up. We have covered a massive amount of ground on this deep dive.
We really have. Let's summarize the big aha moments from session 318. First, we are psychic sponges. We pick up other people's moods and illnesses like invisible viruses, and we urgently need to filter them out with conscious suggestion, namely, I will only react to constructive suggestions.
Right. Second, art is not a luxury. It's a psychic toilet.
A vital filtration system, yes. It forcefully flushes the cluttered subconscious so we can actually function and do our real work. Third, the ego is a massive drama queen. It tries to sabotage our spiritual growth by setting completely impossible standards of perfection.
And fourth, our physical symptoms are just literal symbols acting out our mental state. A stiff neck is a stiff, stubborn attitude. Tying yourself in knots is tying yourself in knots.
And finally, the cure often lies in radically breaking your daily patterns. Wear green. Stop taking the vitamin that reminds you of being a sick kid. Throw out the depressing pink nightgown. Go to a party and be loud.
It's refreshing, isn't it? It's not about meditating on a frozen mountaintop for 10 painful years. It's about changing your gloomy light bulbs and having a beer with your friends.
It brings the spiritual right down into the living room where it belongs.
And puts it to actual work.
Yeah.
So here's my final provocative thought for you listening right now. We asked earlier, what is your pink nightgown? What object in your house is dragging you down? But I want to take that a step further based on everything we just learned about telepathy and the sponge effect.
Okay, where are we going with this?
Think about your digital environment. What is the digital equivalent of the pink nightgown or the cod liver oil?
Oh, wow.
If Seth says we are constantly absorbing the totality of stimuli around us, what happens when we open our phones and scroll through a feed curated by an algorithm designed to show us outrage, fear, and other people's literal trauma?
We're voluntarily hooking ourselves up to a fire hose of non-constructive suggestions.
Exactly. We aren't just reading the news. According to Seth's rules of sympathetic vibration, we are telepathically downloading the anxiety of millions of strangers. Your social media feed might actually be a massive, collective pink nightgown that is causing your modern-day stiff neck.
That is a terrifying and brilliant application of this material. The algorithm is the ultimate unshielded Wi-Fi connection.
Right, so think about it. What digital spaces are you inhabiting that make you feel sick just by looking at them? And then maybe just delete the app, throw it out.
Doctor's orders.
If you want to dive deeper into these concepts, and believe me, we have really only scratched the surface of session 318 and Jane's journey, you owe it to yourself to go to the source.
Absolutely. Study the Seth Material books. There is so much incredible nuance in the full text that we just can't cover here. You can visit the New Awareness Network website and bookstore at sethcenter.com/the-early-sessions.
Let me repeat that for everyone. That's sethcenter.com/the-early-sessions. Go support the publisher, get the books, and do your own deep dive into this material. It's a rabbit hole completely worth falling down.
It really is. And you might just find that the rabbit hole leads right back to a better understanding of yourself.
Indeed it does. Well, that's it for us today. Go wear some green, throw out your hated vitamins, delete the doom-scrolling app, and go have a party this weekend. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
Take curious, everyone.